Good people, here we are in the park on a crisp January day in Seville. You might even see my breath fog the air. This video won't come out until March, I don't think, but I wanted to take advantage of the day in the early morning light to make this video. We are in Miraflores Park in the community gardens section. I don't even know if that's the correct name, but over there are a bunch of tiny plots that if you live in Seville, you can sign up to cultivate. So people come here and they cultivate a wide variety of vegetables. And I love coming here because it's only open from about 9 to 1 and it's just so clean. Anyway, in December of 2022, I reviewed a book called Low Life, a memoir of jazz, fight fixing, and the mob by Charles Farrell, and published by Hamilcar Publications. And the book blew me away. Not only because of its fascinating content, art, the underworld, boxing, but also because of how it was told. Straightforwardly, but with natural flair, and also because of who told it. As Charles Farrell writes in his second book, The Legend of Mitch, Blood Green, and other boxing essays, also brought out by Hamilcar Publications, and which I'm reviewing today, as he writes in that book, he was always willing, often foolishly willing, to pay whatever the cost was to live an unreal life. Well, he has lived it, and even better, he's written about it. I don't know anybody on the American scene with competent, much less impressive writing ability, who has lived to the extent that Charles Farrell has, both on the margins and with his finger on the pulse. You might even say that somebody cynical enough, or maybe morally slippery enough, to have dedicated most of his life to white-collar crime, without any self-deception involved. And at the same time, who is, I don't even know the correct adjective, complicated, resilient, stubborn enough to continue believing in, admiring, and rooting for the deserving underdog, right? The grand and pure gesture. Well, that's Gatsby. As American as you can get. The spectacular failure in pursuit of greatness. The tragedy of the near miss. That's Charles Farrell, with only slight exaggeration. I mean, if you're him, why write fiction? It would be pointless. If you're him, why make anything up? It would be absurd. He writes, for example, in The Legend of Mitch, Blood Green, about the conscious and unconscious decisions to become involved in businesses that encouraged and rewarded various forms of paternalism and exploitation. Like managing fighters, like managing wannabe pop stars, like being landlord, like fixing fights, or various other wheeling and dealing that he won't even admit to. Businesses that, in his words, flatter and victimize, that are predatory. Such businesses, because of what's at stake, give us deeper insight into the human condition and human nature. Charles Farrell lived it and wrote it. His voice, not some ghostwriter's voice, but his voice is on the page. And it's shot through with a vision. The vision that comes with breaking the membrane of, let's say, conventional decency, which most of us don't have the desire or the guts to do. What I love about Charles Farrell, and what I love about this book, and even more so perhaps in Low Life, there's a bit of overlap between the books, by the way. What I love about him in these books is that I don't have to count on the imagination of some fiction writer to know what it means to live on the edge. Charles Farrell brings the more significant insights of fiction into nonfiction without any of the overt craft or tricks, without the whiff of the literary. I keep moving around to get the light right. Anyway, the first, longest, and best essay in this book, which the book takes its title from, is about the time that Charles Farrell managed the fighter Mitch Green years after his beef with Mike Tyson, which was and is his claim to fame. Mitch Green lost a decision to Mike Tyson in 1986, and although he was outmatched, he looked good, and he wasn't knocked down, and even managed to showboat a bit. At the time, he was actually higher in the rankings than Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson would end up 7 months and 7 fights later, winning the heavyweight championship of the world in spectacular fashion against Trevor Berbick. And then in 1988, Mitch Green came back into the picture when he got into a street fight with Mike Tyson. Got his left eye shut and his nose busted open, and Mike Tyson broke his hand. And so was born the legend of Mitch Blood Green, which made him always potentially bankable, even after his very impressive boxing skills and his questionable desire had declined. So it's an essay about Charles Farrell's failed attempt to resuscitate Mitch Green's career. Mitch Green was, and is, a true American character. Full of himself, hilarious without trying to be, like Yogi Berra. Sweet, oddly loyal, skittish, completely unself-aware, talented, charismatic, brave and fearless in his youth, lazy later, and tragically unable to take advantage of his fame and situation to make big, easy money, despite Charles Farrell's savvy advice, which he ignored. But the book is also about black-white race relations in America. I don't know if any writer writes better about that subject than Charles Farrell. He's got nothing to prove and nothing to fear. He is unashamed of privilege, although recognizes that he has it, and he knows who he is. I suspect that to succeed in his career, he depended on, and by that I mean his survival and his solvency depended on people's character, on who he trusted. And he learned on the streets that that had nothing to do with race. I mean, Charles Farrell never went to school. I know he didn't go to university. I don't even think he went to high school. And so all of the scams and smoke blowing about race in America, which has got its tentacles wrapped around the education system in the United States, especially the higher education system, it never touched Farrell. It never corrupted him. So he can just write the truth as he saw it on the streets. Is there anything that I distrust Farrell on? Well, he's a bit of a contrarian. Perhaps that makes me slightly wary. I mean, are all the great fighters from previous generations, are they all really as good as Farrell says they are, with current day fighters unable to measure up? I just don't have the knowledge to answer that question. But you know what? I like contrarians. I'm one with regard to what I know. For example, so many writers are overpraised by people who should know better. And I feel this tremendous urge to call the literary establishment on its bullshit. Perhaps that comes from me thinking deep down that I haven't gotten the recognition that I deserve. I hope my main motivation isn't to stick it to the establishment. I don't think that that's Charles Farrell's main motivation either. But I get a bit suspicious when he starts naysaying, as perhaps you should get a bit suspicious when I start naysaying. Okay, some words about some of the other chapters. Farrell is really good on Floyd Mayweather Jr., on the keys to that fighter's success. He's really good on how quickly the bloom can come off the rose of a fighter, as he puts it, off of Anthony Joshua, for instance. He's really good on Muhammad Ali, on his influence on fighting, on sports in general, and on how athletes promote themselves. He believes that Ali's longevity and greatness as a champion had more to do with savvy and heart than with talent. He's controversial on the subject because he claims that both of Ali's wins over Liston were fixed. Nobody wants to hear that because it mars Ali's legacy, but I just don't see why Farrell would lie about that, even if he is a contrarian. He's also really good on what he terms talented losers, like, for example, Smokin' Bert Cooper, the late Smokin' Bert Cooper, protege of the late Smokin' Joe Frazier, who was not a talented loser. He was a winner. Farrell also puts Mitch Blood Green into the category of talented loser, and he puts himself into that category. I think it's gutsy and heartbreaking for me for Farrell to write that, because you can tell he's not being falsely modest. He really believes it, even if we don't, or even if I don't. For someone who lived so many years outside the law, exploiting and being exploited, deceiving behind the scenes, it might seem contradictory for me to say that as a writer, Charles Farrell tells the truth, but that's ultimately why I'm drawn to him. Zero artifice, natural literary voice, no exaggerated effect, no contrivances, no wasted words. He never tries to be impressive or sublime, but manages to be both by telling the truth, which is the point in this trade. At some point in The Legend of Mitch Blood Green, he writes how for something as fundamentally true as boxing, there's a tremendous amount of bullshit involved. The exact same thing could be said about writing, but not about Charles Farrell's writing. This guy writes for the ages, man. Before I go to my recommended videos, I just wanted to give you all a view of these community vegetable gardens. When I become an old man and I change hobbies from reviewing books, I might switch to gardening, man. It's a great spot. And I'm getting out of here early, man. I'm getting out of here early. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Keep coming back. Spread the word if you feel like it.